All right, so I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. This is a SAVI Level 2 webinar covering community profiles in my communities. My name is Jay Colbert. I'll be running the class today. So I'll be doing some stuff online for you, and also if you have questions, feel free to type them out in the chat log, and I will try to keep an eye on that as we go through so I can answer any questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's our agenda today. I'll talk a little bit about our objectives today. We'll talk about community profiles in general, and then we'll talk specifically about custom community profiles and how you can save those to My Communities. And then at the end of our time today, I'll have a student exercise where you can practice what you're going to learn today. So our objectives today, after completing the course, you'll be able to search and select a community of interest. You can view that community profile, and you can also print the community profile as well. And then we'll also talk about defining a custom community if none of the predefined communities that we have um, meet your need. And while defining those custom communities, I'll also show you how to use the street highlighter tool. And then we'll also talk about how to save and retrieve custom communities using the My Communities page. So let's talk about community profiles in general. We have over 2,000 community profiles defined in the Community Profiles tool. And we do this by a lot of different geographies. So for example, counties, townships, school corporations, neighborhood, census tracts, census block groups, and then we also recently added zip codes as well. Now the community profiles will provide an overview of the community's demographics, economic situation, educational attainment, health situation, housing, and so on. And you can see those categories that we have available here. Now sometimes an area will have a history associated with it. You'll see that more often with larger areas such as counties and some townships, and you also see that with the neighborhood profiles as well. Not that every single neighborhood does have a profile. And then you are also able to get a list of assets that are within the area that you're looking at using the Assets tab. Now, once you get to viewing the profile, you'll see a lot of data in the profiles. You'll see some predefined charts and graphs as well. And the data that you see in the profiles are dynamically updated each time that we update the SAVI database. So you can be sure that you're looking at the most recent data that we have available to us. You can also create and define custom communities by searching for the community of interest, selecting a community of interest by name, or searching and creating your custom community by using a point radius around an address or around existing SAVI asset. So if you're going to be using the community profiles tool, you're not required to be logged in when you do this. If you just want to view profiles, if you want to save your custom profiles, then you do have to be logged in. So either way, whether you're logged in or not, you will find the Community Profiles tool under the Use Savvy tab and the Community Profiles tab here. Now there's a couple of different ways you can get to the profiles. If you took the Savvy Level 1 class, you see how you can just hover over the Community Profiles tab and then drill down through um, the menus to find the area that you're looking for. One moment. We got one student having trouble with audio. All right, so the other way to get to the community profiles is just by clicking on the community profiles tab. And then that brings you to the community profiles page, which you'll have a map on that page. And then you also see three different ways you can select your profiles. There's a search tab, a select tab, and then a point radius tab. Now the select tab lets you just view items in a list, and you can select the item, the community that you're interested in. The search tab lets you type in a search term, and then the point radius tool that we'll see later allows you to select areas in a certain radius around a point. So let's start with the search tab. The search tab allows you to use keywords to search for a community profile. And you can narrow down the search results by selecting a community type and a county. So in this example, where our search term is center, and we want to search for townships within Marion County. So we set our input here as you see, and then we click the search button, and then we're returned one result, Center Township. And at this point, you can click on the checkbox next to the entry of Center Township, and you'll see that area highlighted on the map. And also note in the Your Selections text box, it will show you what area or areas you have selected. And then from this point, if this is what you want, you're happy with the selection, you can just click the View Profile button, and it'll take you to the community profile for that area. Now, another way you can select your areas is using the Select tab. So in this example, we're going to select we're going to set the community type to townships, and then we want to look for townships within Marion County. So we set these inputs how we need them, and then we click the Find button, and then we're presented with a list of all of the townships that are in Marion County. And then here we can, again, click on the check boxes, and we see our selections at the bottom, in that bottom Your Selections text box. Now also keep in mind at this point, if you want to do a custom community, and I'll show an example of this, you can select multiple townships at this point. And then from there, when you click View Profile, you'll get that custom community profile. Now keep in mind when you do these custom profiles, it's a little bit slower because we got to add up all of that data at the time that you click the View Profile button. So it takes a minute or two to come back, but it'll come back, and when it does, it'll be all the same charts and data that you get with a regular profile, along with the Assets tab as well that works the same. So here we've selected Center Township from the list, and we see it highlighted on the map, and we see it entered into the Your Selections text box. So at this point, we want to view the data. We can click the View Profile button, and then if we change our mind, we can remove data selections. If you just want to kind of start over completely, you can just push the Clear button, and it'll remove all your selections, and you can just start over. So we made our selections, and we got to our profile. This is what the community profile will now look like. So we land on the Overview tab, which gives us also a map of the area that we have selected. And then if there's a history available, that will also be shown on the Overview tab. And then all of the data that you're looking for will be on the individual category tab, so demographics, economy, and so on. And then notice the Assets tab as well, where you can get a list of assets that are contained within that area. So let's say that you want to view the assets within an area. You're going to click on that Assets tab, and then it's just a matter of drilling down through the categories now. So here we've clicked on the arts, culture, and recreation category, and then we'll see all the options here. So I can select camps, museums, zoos, youth programs, and so on. And if I want to actually view that, what you do at this point is to click on the Map Action button for the category that you're interested in. Now, when you do that, it will take you to a map, and it's basically just a quick info window. So if you're familiar with the quick info window already, you'll be able to navigate that pretty easily. You'll you'll see the points on the map. You can click on the points on the map, and you can also view those points in a table as well. And then also you can mess with, you can change the categories that are shown there if you want to change your category. So let me show an example about some of the things we've talked about so far. So here I am on the SAVI homepage. I want to view the community profiles. Note that I'm already logged in here. So I can, one way to get to the profiles is just to drill down through the menus to find the area that you're interested in. I'm just going to click on the community profiles tab there, so it takes me to the map. There's a couple different ways I can interact with the map here. I could just click on the map to select the area that I'm interested in, and from here I can click the View Profile button. Note you can also select multiple areas on the map, and this is how we do that custom community deal. So I clicked on multiple areas and click on View Profile. And this is a deal where once you do this as a custom area and you click View Profile, you got to be patient, wait for that minute or two for that profile to come back. A couple other ways I can make selections. I can click on the map to turn them off. So here I can search through a list of counties, or I can search, for example, through a list of townships. Before we looked at Marion County, I got to click that Find button, but now you're showing a list of all the townships in Marion County, and you can click on multiples in the list too if you're also interested in building a custom community in this way. The other example that we saw was using the search tool, the search tab. So I can search for the term center. I want to see the townships. I'm going, let me set this county option to all counties, and I'll click that. So we see multiple entries for center township, and we see here the reason is that there's multiple counties that have a center township. Another useful way to use the search tool is when searching for neighborhoods. So one example I use is searching for Broad Ripple. So I search in my, I type in my search term. My community type is neighborhoods. All these neighborhoods are in Marion County, so whether you set that county option to Marion County or all counties, you'll get the same results. So the reason I use this example is that if you're just looking at the list of neighborhoods, sometimes things won't appear where you would expect them to be alphabetically. So here, if I was looking through this list alphabetically, it would be easy to find Broad Ripple Village Association, but then Greater Broad Ripple Community Coalition will be found elsewhere in the list. And then the reason this becomes important is that these neighborhoods all define themselves, and they define themselves differently. So we see the definition here for Broad Ripple Village as that collection of these are census block groups, and then the Greater Broad Ripple Community Coalition defines themselves a little bit larger. And then if you're familiar with the Indy Vitals tool, You can also come to SAVI and view the community profiles for those Indy Vitals neighborhoods as defined by a collection of census tracts. So let me go back to counties here, and I'm just going to select Marion County. There we go. So I'm going to select Marion County and click the View Profile button just so we can see what the profile looks like. So here we see a history of the area. If you see these histories, take a moment to read them. There's some interesting tidbits in there. And then we also get the map. And then the individual information is on these on the data tabs, on the category tabs. Now, the one thing I want to point out here is to make sure you realize that there's these subcategory panes. So you can click on those subcategories to get more charts, more tables. So make sure that you explore those options as well. And the other thing to point out is, this was a bad example for that, depending on what you pick, will also provide a comparison. So if you're looking at a township, you'll get the township numbers, and then for comparison's sake, you would also get the county numbers as well. So if you find yourself looking at a number and it seems wrong to you, grossly overinflated, make sure you're looking at the right column, because there will be multiple areas in that community profile just for comparison's sake. So let me also show this Assets tab. So I drilled down through the categories here. I drilled down through education, and I see some possibility to select here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the charter schools category. This might be difficult to see on your screen, but here is a map of all the charter schools that are in Marion County. And so let's say you get to this point and you want to see more than just charter schools. Let's say you just want to see schools regardless of what type of school there are. You can set this category 3 to please select. You got to click that update view button, but then the map will update. Now we're looking at a map of all the schools that are in Marion County. And you can click on these points as well on the map and click to view more to get a little bit more information about those schools. All right, so let me go back to the presentation. So we talked about the asset map. So now you're within the profile and you like it, it's what you want. There's some information there you want to save. One of the things that you can do here is print the profile. So when you're within the profile, you'll see a link that says print profile. You just click that, and a pop-up window is going to open up. That looks like this, and you can select which categories you want to include in your profile. So if you want everything, go ahead and select everything. If you just want a certain number of categories, you can do that as well. You also have the ability to create a title and a subtitle for your profile as well. Now the other thing, the important thing here to remember is when you print this, you can print it, which basically prints an HTML version, and you can also generate a PDF profile as well. So be warned that the PDF profile is kind of slow. It'll take up to maybe 5 minutes to actually generate that PDF. So if you're really just interested in printing, I urge you to use the print HTML profile option. And even if you just want to save it electronically, you can do that as well with the print HTML profile. If you just click the print HTML profile. It'll basically open up a web page that has a profile in it, and then you can right click on it, click print if you want to print it, and you can also click save, which saves it to a HTML archive file, which isn't as nice as a PDF file, but it all happens a lot quicker than the PDF profile does. And so when you print the profile, you'll get the title that you gave it, and then you get all the other stuff that you see in the profile, all the charts, all of the comparison geographies as well, the margins of error, the percents of total, and all that. Now there's also a couple other things that you can do when you're viewing the community profile. Now, if you're logged in, if you're registered and logged in, you will see this link here, save as a custom community. So you will see that link whether it's actually a single area profile or a multi-area custom profile. Now, it's in this example, we're just looking at Center Township, but it can still be useful for you to save this as a custom community because you can then retrieve it later on. So if you find yourself often looking at the Center Township profile, you can save it to your list of communities and then quickly retrieve it in the future. The other important thing here to remember is that if you are doing a custom community with multiple areas, like I said before, it is slower than the regular profile, so it takes a minute or two for that profile to come back. But once you get to this point with a custom profile, if you save it as a custom community, you can retrieve it from your My Communities list in the future, and it's much quicker because at that point we already have all the data aggregated, and it just acts like just any other profile at that point. It's a lot quicker. So if you do expect to use that custom community over and over, make sure you log in, create the profile, save it as a custom community, and I'll show you here coming up how you retrieve that from your My Communities list. And if you just want to start over, you've had enough, just click on this Start New Community link, and it takes you back to the community profile page with the clean slate, and you can just start over. So I've mentioned this My Communities tool a couple of times. I may have called it the Community Profile List. That's basically what it is. It's a list of your saved custom communities. So this tool will allow you to manage your custom communities and retrieve those custom communities. And really, part of the whole community profile tool is being able to define those custom communities. So we talked about searching and selecting for those areas. Another way to do it is using the point radius tool around an asset or an address. And another thing I'll show here is the street highlighter tool. And of course, the goal here is to get to that detailed community profile. So to do this, you have to be registered and logged in, and you have to know that you have to hover over your login name up here. And when you do that, this drop down will come down, and then what we're going to click on here is the My Communities link. So let me just show that real quick on the website, just to make sure we're on the same page. So here I'm going to hover over my login and say My Communities, and then I see a list of all the custom communities that I've created in the past. So let's talk about a couple of ways you can define and save your custom communities. One of the useful tools here is the street highlighter tool. So a lot of times organizations will define their service areas as, using bounding streets. And so this tool lets you highlight those bounding streets, and then you select the area that's within those streets. So our example here is our neighborhood is trying to increase home ownership, and you want to know how many home loans were made in your neighborhood in the most recent year. And and previous years. And the area that you're interested in is bounded by these 4 streets: Meridian Street, Keystone Avenue, 30th Street, and 52nd Street. So this all happens on the main community profile page, and you'll notice that you have a street highlighter button here. So you click on that street highlighter button, and this window will open up that allows us to search for streets. And there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can click on the letter that represents the first letter in the street name, and then scroll through the list to find the area that you're looking for. Much easier is probably typing in the street name itself. So in this example, we're going to type in Meridian. Then we click the search button. And then we're shown a list of all the Meridian streets that are in the SAVI area. This is where you're kind of on the hook yourself for doing some thinking. So you'll see a lot of meridians listed here: Meridian Avenue, Meridian Court, Drive, and so on. But we know that the one we're interested in is actually Meridian Street. So here we would find the correct one and click the checkbox next to that name. So when you do that, you'll see that the street is added to the list of currently selected streets. And so we type in Meridian, click search, click the checkbox, and it adds it to the list. So now we can move on to the next one and come back to the search, type in Keystone, click search, make sure that we're looking at Keystone Avenue, and click that checkbox, and then it gets added to the list. Then once you've done all this, you can click the back to the map button, and it takes you back to the map, and these streets will be highlighted like we see in this example here. So 30th to 52nd, and then Keystone to Meridian. So this is our area of interest here. Now the important thing to remember here is the street highlighter tool doesn't actually select anything for you. You're on the hook for doing that yourself. It's just kind of a guide to show you those basic areas. So now at this point we start clicking on the map and selecting these areas. And this is a good example because you will have to make some decisions about, do I include this in this example census tract or do I exclude it? So most of these are pretty easy. Obviously these census tracts here are going to be selected, as are these here. And then we get to some of these other choices here. So this particular census tract is a good example. If my bounding street is Meridian Street, I would probably not select that one because the majority of it is outside of my area of interest. And then we see this tract here. This one's a lot harder decision. It's maybe half in, half out. So you're going to have to decide on your own whether you would include that census tract or not. But you'll click on the map, make those selections, and then you'll also notice that your selections will be shown in the text box down here along with the census tract number. And this is also a good way of, if you need a census tract number, you don't know what it is, you can click on the map, see what the census tract number is, and then you have that. And it also works the other way as well. If you have a census tract number and you don't know where it is, you can use the select tab here, select census tracts, and click search. And you'll see a little bit behind here, there's a list of census tract numbers. You can click on that census tract number, it'll be highlighted on the map so you'll know where that census tract is. So at this point, I've made my selections. I'm happy with it. I want to move on to the next step, which here is going to be the View Profile button. And again, it's a custom community, so it'll take a minute or two for those tracts to, or that profile to return. So the other ways, and we've already talked about some of these to an extent, the other ways you can define your area is using the search, select, and point radius tabs. Anytime you can see the map, also you can also just click on the map to select your areas. But the select tab basically allows you to search from a list of areas, and you can filter that down by county and select those areas. The search tab, as we saw before with that broad ripple example, you can type in a search term and select from a list of items that are returned based on that search. The other way we've not talked about yet is using the point radius tool. And with the point radius tool, we select geographies that are within a distance around some point, whether it's an address or whether it's a pre-existing SAVI asset. So here we are, a little bit more detail with the select tab. We've seen this before. You can just click on the map if you want, or you can select from a list of counties as well. And then here we are with the point radius tool. So in this example, you would click on the point radius tab, and then which way do you want to search? You want to search for an existing SAVI asset, or do you want to just type in a particular address? So here in this example, we're selecting an asset, and it opens up a new window where we can choose an asset, and we drill down through some categories here, and then finally we would select the asset that we're interested in, and also you have to select your geography type and then the radius that you want to use. So here we're going to select all of the block groups within 3 miles of our selected asset. So I make all those selections and I click the save button, and then I move on to the next step. And the other way you can do this is by searching for a specific address. So even if you start by selecting an asset and you change your mind, I just want to do this by an address, you can click on the specific address tab there. Or if you start that way, specific address, and click next, either way it takes you to the specific address tab. And so here we actually type in the address we're interested in and then click find addresses. Depending on what address you put in, you might get a couple of different potential matches to that address. Usually just returns one, but if it returns multiples, you'll see those options in the drop-down box here, and you can select the proper address. And again, you're on the hook for selecting your geography type and the distance. And then finally, we'll click Save. So regardless how you do it, once you click the Save button, you're not actually creating the custom community yet. It just takes you back to the Community Profiles map, and on the map, all those areas fitting your criteria will be selected. Then from this point, if you're happy with the selection, you can click the View Profile button, wait that minute or two, and get your profile. But you also still have the option of just cleaning up your selections here. So you might say, well, this is pretty close to what I wanted, but these sets of tracks here kind of seem a little too far out of the way. You can click on the map at this point and turn those selections off. So you can kind of tweak your selection there, include tracks that were not originally selected, or eliminate tracks that were selected. So another thing I want to point out here is when you're on the SAVI map and you've made some selections, you also have this Save as Custom Community button here, which is a little bit different from what we saw before, which was a link to save as a custom community once we were actually viewing the profile. But you also have the option of saving it here as well. Now I recommend, if you're going to be using this tool, to view the profile first before you save it. It seems to work a little bit better, because here, if you click the Save as Custom Community, it's got to do that math to create the profile, and it seems to work a little bit better if you wait till you're actually viewing the profile to save it. But if you do click the button at that point, it'll just prompt you for a name for the community, and you can type in your name and then click the Save User Community button. So let me show a couple examples of what I was talking about. I want to go to the Community Profiles page, so I just click on the Community Profiles tab. The Street Highlighter button that I'll show, you click the Street Highlighter button. And the easiest way to do this is to just type in the street name and then click Search. And here's where you got to keep your eyes open. So I know that I mean Meridian Street, but the system doesn't know that until you actually tell it. So here I'm going to click on Meridian Street. I see it added to my list. Then I can add Keystone, click Search. Then I know I'm talking about Keystone Avenue, but I gotta tell SAVI that I mean Keystone Avenue. So I see that um, shown on the map, or sorry, in the box there. And even as you're doing this, you can see that your highlights will start showing up on the map. So I also want to search for 52nd Street to make sure I'm doing street and not place. And then finally 30th Street. And then I click 30th Street. And so all my selections are done. I'm done with that, and I can go back to the map. So I see my streets highlighted there. So I see my streets highlighted there. And now I have to make some selections. So I start clicking on the map. Accidentally clicked the fairgrounds there to turn on the tracks that I want to include. And at this point, I can click the View Profile button, get into View the Profile, and then save save that profile. Now, another thing I want to show is actually getting to those saved profiles. So that's that deal where you got to hover over your login up here, and then I'm going to select the My Communities list option there, so I can view a list of my communities. And then I see all of these custom communities that I've saved. Now, if you want to view one of these profiles, all you got to do is click on that View Profile link here. So I want to click on that View Profile for this area. And you see it comes back pretty quick. This is actually the 6-county United Way of Central Indiana area. So it's not a geography that we have in SAVI, but we can kind of create it by selecting those counties. And so now as I click on the individual data categories, you'll see all of those data elements that we see for any other custom community. The charts, and the data tables and all that. All right, so we got a couple other things to do here, but if anybody has any questions up to now, feel free to type them out in the chat log, and I will try to give them give an answer to those in between the few other things we got to do. Here is my contact information. If you have questions, um, feel free to call or email. And if I'm not around, feel free to use this SAVI at IUPUI email address. I'm typically in the building on Mondays and Tuesdays, so on those other days, that SAVI address might work a little bit better for you. We're on Twitter and Facebook now, so sign up and get all your SAVI news of the day. One other thing I want to point out here is there's the step-by-step tutorials, the help files for the custom communities. You can find that under How to Use SAVI, and overview, and then as you scroll down, you'll see the community profiles link here, which will talk about creating those custom communities and saving them and retrieving them and all that. So now I want to take a few minutes to go through the student exercise. So here's the student exercise. I want you to kind of take a crack at doing this and see how far you get, and then I'll cover the solution after a few minutes. So here's our scenario here. We're talking about the greater Southeast neighborhood. This is one of Marion County's neighborhoods where a group of community leaders are envisioning improving its living conditions for healthy, safe, and better neighborhood, which will provide ideal environment for homeowners to to garner the future young generation. So the group approached the Indiana Youth Institute with a request for funding to conduct workshops and classes for the youth in its neighborhood as part of this initiative. And to help achieve this and qualify for the grant funding, the group has presented analysis of the neighborhood, highlighting the following parameters. So we want to talk about the crime rate. We want to talk about the demographic makeup of the neighborhood. We want to talk about housing, such as, what's the vacancy rate going on there, and then in general, what's the level of educational attainment in the neighborhood. So the neighborhood we're talking about here is bounded by Washington Street, Sherman Drive, 465 on the south side, and Meridian Street on the west side. So what I want you to do is use the community profiles tool and try to use the street highlighter tool and then select the appropriate census tracts and then see if you can view that profile as well. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do that, and then at the end of those 5 minutes I'll come back and we'll talk about the solution to this exercise together. And if you get stuck or have any questions, just type them out in the chat log and I'll help you out with it. All right, well, let's talk through this solution here. Hopefully, you're able to make some progress on building the profile and getting the data uh, that we were interested in. So, there's a few different ways possibly you could go about this. Uh, but we're going to start by clicking on the Community Profiles tab. Um, it's always best to, go to SAVI, log in, and then go to Community Profiles tab if you're going to do some kind of custom deal where you think you're going to save your profile. And so here we are, we're on the main Community Profiles page, and we've clicked the Street Highlighter tool, which opens up the Street Highlighter window. We've typed in each name of our streets here and selected them using the checkboxes. We see them in the list, and we see those areas highlighted on the map as well. And when we're done with this, we click the Back to Map button. And then now we're on the hook for doing a fair amount of clicking in this example. So we click on the map to select the areas we're interested in. And again, the street highlights are just guidance. It doesn't actually select anything for you, so you're on the hook for making some of those decisions of whether to include something or exclude it. So we get all that done. We have our selections how we want, and then we click the View Profile button. Then it takes us to the community profile itself, and then we can get the information we're looking for by clicking on the individual category tabs. So here I've clicked on the demographic tab, click the plus sign next to gender, and that gives me an age pyramid. And then it also gives me the information broken out by a few different geographies, such as when you see my community here, that's talking about the profile that you just created. And then for comparison's sake, you'll also get Marion County. Then depending on what you're looking at, you might also get the MSA values as well. So we also had a question about public safety. So we had a question about crime rate, I think is how it was posed, but we'll find that under the public safety tab, and we get the answers to the crime. So here we're looking at juvenile crimes by severity. We see a certain number of felony charges, misdemeanor charges, and so on. All right, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat log. The last thing I'm going to ask of you is to fill out the course evaluation form. And you'll find that under the How to Use SAVI and then the Training tab, and it's the big green button once you get to that page. So if you can, please take a minute to give us some feedback on the course. If you have any ideas on how to make the course better, we're all ears. Um, and so that's all I have. So I'll hang out on the webinar for a few minutes in case anybody has any questions. And if anything else, just remember you're always welcome to call me or to call or email SAVI. The SAVI email address is savi@iupy.edu. And I think one other phone number I need to add there is the front office desk, which if I'm not around, they can find someone in the building to help you. And that number is 317-274-2455. But other than that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today and hope to see you in future SAVI classes.